Stephen A. Smith Show coming at you as I love to do right here on ESPN Radio every weekday afternoon. 98.7 FM New York, 710 ESPN LA, and of course, Sirius XM, ESPN, Channel 80. Got a lot of stuff to get into today. Super Bowl talk. Of course, we'll get into the new hires in San Francisco with GM John Lynch, along with Chris Ballard, GM in Indianapolis. We'll get into the Super Bowl talk. We'll get into the blowout loss suffered by the Los Angeles Clippers at the hands of the Golden State Warriors, who provided yet again more credence to my argument that Kevin Durant's arrival in Golden State has ruined our basketball season. We will talk about that and more as the show progresses today. I'll have on the great Dr. Michael Eric Dyson at 1:30 p.m. He's got a new book coming out. And with these trying times that we're living in, it's definitely apropos to have a conversation with him. We'll have ESPN analyst extraordinaire Ryan Clark, former Super Bowl champion with the Pittsburgh Steelers. He knows a thing or two about championships. He'll be on the air talking with us at the top of hour number 2. I cut off the music because the bottom line is this. When we look at what's going on and what's transpiring in this world today, it went to another level over the weekend when President Donald Trump instituted a ban, essentially, temporarily, but nevertheless a ban, scheduled to affect roughly 218 million people from entering the United States. Trump barred citizens from 7 Muslim-majority countries from entering the U.S. for at least the next 90 days by executive order. A senior White House official later said Friday, that is, it was likely just a first step towards establishing a broader ban. The countries suffering banishment were Iraq, Syria, Iran, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and Yemen. If you watch Fareed Zakaria, GPS, Sunday morning on CNN, he adroitly highlighted how, of those 7 countries, the number of Americans killed by their citizens here in the U.S. from 1975 to 2015. Iran, 0. Iraq, 0. Libya, 0. Somalia, 0. Sudan, 0. Syria, 0. Yemen, 0. Yet all of them fell under the Muslim ban list. But when you talk about the number of Americans killed by citizens from Saudi Arabia, that number jumped from 0 from the previous 7 nations I mentioned that were on the ban list to 2,369 based out of Saudi Arabia. 2,369 Americans killed by citizens from Saudi Arabia. The UAE, 314 Americans killed. Egypt, 162 Americans killed. Lebanon, 155. None of them are included in Trump's quote-unquote Muslim ban. That's how people are interpreting it. But guess what? When it comes to Saudi Arabia, when it comes to Egypt, when it comes to Turkey, when it comes to the UAE, Trump has business interest in all of those countries that aren't necessarily on his banned list. Coincidence? You debate that. That's not for us to do here over the airwaves of a sports network, which is that of ESPN. But what we can debate is what Steve Kerr, the coach of the Golden State Warriors, had to say. Keep in mind, Steve Kerr was a college student, 18 years of age, when his father, who was over in Beirut, working for the university over there, which was a dream job of his, was murdered by terrorists, shot in the head twice. Let's keep that in mind. So when we talk about somebody like a Steve Kerr and we want to absorb the words that he decides to espouse upon us, let's keep in mind, Steve Kerr has credibility here, strong credibility, stronger credibility than most of us. Listen to what the coach of the Golden State Warriors had to say about President Donald Trump's ban.
I would just say, that as a someone whose family member was a victim of terrorism, having lost my father. If we're trying to combat terrorism by banishing people from coming to this country, really going against the principles of what our country's about and creating fear. It's the wrong way to go about it. If anything, we could be breeding anger and terror, and so I'm completely against what's happening.
That was Steve Kerr, the coach of the Golden State Warriors. Let me say, first of all, I agree with his premise. I consider this a ban against Muslims. Others may disagree with that. They have the right to do so. The 62.9 million people who voted for Trump. I want to emphasize, people who consider them xenophobes, who consider them racist, and all of this other stuff, it's irresponsible. And for the most part, inaccurate. Don't tell me 62.9 million people are racist. 8% of the African Americans who voted for him ain't racist. 29% of the Latino community, even in the aftermath of him swearing he was going to build a wall and Mexicans were going to pay for it, we can't label them racist. So overall, that's 37% of the voting populace who voted in favor of him. Let's be a bit responsible. Do I disagree with him? Hell yes. Do I like this? Absolutely not. And I'm not disagreeing with him because I'm going to complain about travel or anything like that. This is serious business. And I'm not minimizing his actions by any stretch of the imagination. I disagree with him. I believe this is the wrong way to go. I don't believe this is America. This is the American way. I don't believe this is the way to go. I don't believe this is what we're about. We're about being inclusionary, not exclusionary. But I say all of that while also feeling the need to remind you of this. Times are different. Once upon a time, Homeland Security didn't exist. If I recall correctly, that didn't come into play until November of 2002. Because it was the aftermath of 9/11 and what transpired. And that's what ultimately led to the arrival of Homeland Security. We didn't know anything about yellow codes and orange codes and code reds outside of A Few Good Men, the movie. We didn't know too much about that until 9/11. So it's one thing to be prejudiced against foreigners. It's another thing to be fearful. Accurate or not, right or not. The fact of the matter is the world that we're living in, the nation that hovers over us, that has dominion and purview over us, have given us cause to pause and be somewhat fearful. And I think that's what you're seeing as a reaction from some of the American people who may have voted for Trump. But more importantly than anything else, and I apologize to those who were watching me on First Take this morning because I neglected to mention this, but I had a fact laid out for me that I had completely forgotten about. And that is this. According to the draft copy of Trump's executive order, the countries whose citizens are barred entirely from entering the United States is based on a bill that former President Barack Obama signed into law in December of 2015. Obama signed the Visa Waiver Program Improvement and Terrorist Travel Prevention Act as part of an omnibus spending bill. That legislation restricted access to the Visa Waiver Program, which allows citizens from 38 countries who are visiting the United States for less than 90 days to enter without a visa. Though outside groups, because I'm reading here, though outside groups such as the American Civil Liberties Union and the NIAC Action, the sister organization of the National Iranian American Council, opposed the act, the bipartisan bill passed through Congress with little pushback. At the initial signing of the restrictions, foreigners who would normally be deemed eligible for a visa waiver were denied if they had visited Iran, Syria, Sudan, or Iraq in the previous 5 years or held dual citizenship from one of those countries. In February of 2016, the Obama administration added Libya, added Somalia, added Yemen to the list of countries one could not have visited, but allowed dual citizens of those countries who had not traveled there access to the visa waiver program. Dual citizens of Syria, Sudan, Iraq, and Iran are still ineligible. So in a nutshell, former President Barack Obama restricted visa waivers for those 7 Muslim-majority countries: Iran, Iraq, Syria, Sudan, Somalia, Libya, and Yemen. And now Trump is looking to bar immigration and visitors from the same list. So essentially what that means, ladies and gentlemen, is that Trump, according to those looking to support him, took a cue from the president. And instead of just mandating that you do acquire visas, instead of not having to have visas, he's going a step further and is looking to bar immigration and visitors for at least 90 days until they're excessively vetted. Does that make a difference in your opinions? I don't know. But I thought in the interest of fairness, it was a fact worthy of pointing out. Because even though Hillary Rodham Clinton, who is a Democrat, who wanted to succeed Barack Obama and implement some of his policies along the way, received 65 million votes, President Trump received 62.9 million and had 306 electoral college votes when he only needed 270. This is with him telling folks what he was going to do. And now he's doing it. Just thought everybody would need to understand that as we move forward. 866-729-ESPN is the number to call up. That's 866-729-3776. I have more to say on this topic. And it's in the area of sports, don't you worry. It's the Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio. Spoke out, meaning Steve Kerr, head coach for the Golden State Warriors, about the Trump ban. Also, NBA spokesman Mike Bass released the following statement on Saturday night. Quote, "We have reached out to the State Department and are in the process of gathering information to understand how this executive order would apply to players in our league who are from one of the impacted countries. The NBA is a global league, and we are proud to attract the very best players from around the world." You have to also understand something. That list, those countries on that list, in the eyes of many, are there due to the whole vetting process issue. The countries listed are believed to have shaky vetting processes. And that's really what it comes down to. The fact that it was President Obama's list that this was peeled from to address visas. Folks being able to come into the country without visas when their vetting process isn't considered that strong, all of a sudden, in my opinion, dissipates the level of tension that can exist. Because when President Obama made this decision, and it was voted on in bipartisan fashion, these protests weren't in the streets. Now, the protests are valid because I understand people's fears. Please don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to minimize that in any way. I'm just saying you have to take both sides and get as close to the facts as you possibly can when you talk about an issue this sensitive. Can't wait to have Dr. Michael Eric Dyson on the show in approximately 9 minutes or so. Let's get right to the phones at 866-729-ESPN. That's 866-729-3776. Let's get to Nabu in New York. You're live with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio. Nabu, go ahead real quick, buddy.
What's happening, brother? I got a few things. I'm going to keep it real short. I find it just highly, I just find it weird that the countries that were named have never had a terrorist kill anyone on U.S. soil. Mm-hmm. Yet you have UAE, you have Saudi Arabia, and you have Egypt, who have murdered Americans, and they're not on the list.
I agree with that. I started off the show with that, but I will ask you this question in all fairness.
Yes, sir.
We want to be fair here, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Does your mind or your thinking get altered in any way when you consider the fact that the banned list mirrors that of President Obama's list when it comes to those countries due to visa issues? Not letting them come in without the visa waiver. Usually they could come in without, you have to have a visa. You could just come right in. But President Obama mandated that you now had to go through the process of acquiring the visas in order for you to come into this country. I think it was from 38 different countries, if I remember correctly. And then they zeroed in on those same 7 that Trump peeled from. Does that affect your thinking at all?
Not at all, and this is why. See, it's one thing if you say there's a possibility that these countries are weak in their vetting process, I'll give you that. Mm-hmm. If they're weak, you can help them strengthen that. But when you have a proven history of these people murdering us, why are they not at least on the list?
That's a fair question.
You have proof that they killed us.
No,
it's not a maybe, it's not a what if, it's not a probability.
That's it. No. Don't say no more. You could not have said it better yourself. I couldn't have said it better myself. You're absolutely right on the money. That is a very, very valid point, and I appreciate your call. Thank you so much. Omar in Cleveland, you're live with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio. Omar, good afternoon.
Hey, how you doing, Stephen A? First of all, I want to say I'm a huge fan, man. Love your show.
Thank you.
First Take, listen to you on ESPN Radio every day.
Thank you.
Appreciate you, man. I'm a Muslim immigrant, man. I was born in Jerusalem, but I want to start off saying this. First of all, I don't want to get into all the facts that everybody already knows. We understand that, it's countries that that have not had terrorists who have actually killed Americans, or, the ones that have, they're not on the list and they should be, and all of that. So I'm not even going to get into everything that's understood. But what I do want to say is that the problem that it creates is we're just causing more hate. See, nobody really talks about how many innocent civilians that have been casualty of our attacks over there. So when you do something like this, you're just really fueling the fire.
Omar, you could say that, and I get that point. To me, that isn't the biggest concern. The biggest concern is that there's over 1 billion Muslims in this world. And in order to fight terrorism, there is no question that by and large, most Muslims are law-abiding citizens, Lord-fearing individuals that don't engage in terrorism. So understanding and accepting that as fact, which everyone does, the fact of the matter is that to do something like this, you sort of you may turn that community, meaning the Muslim community, against you, and we have enough enemies. And we gotta take into account that we make up only 5% of the world's population. And we may be a superpower, but there are other powers in this world. And if they collaborate with the insidious that exist in this world, fueling additional hatred for our country, it becomes a very, very dangerous situation for us to be in, which is what I think that Steve Kerr was clearly alluding to when he said what he said, and that's why I can't be ignored. I got to run, Omar. I appreciate the call. Thank you so much. 866-729-ESPN. That's 866-729-3776. Dr. Michael Eric Dyson, incredibly knowledgeable on subjects of this matter and more, professor at Georgetown University, noted author, and then some, has a new book out. And the book is Tears We Cannot Stop, a sermon to white America. Somehow, some way, I think he's going to have something a tad bit different to say in just a few minutes in light of this Trump ban. And I think it's incredibly apropos that we're about to have him on the show right now. Dr. Michael Eric Dyson up next with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio.
Warning.
ESPN Radio. It is my honor and privilege to have my next guest on the line. I've known him for many, many years. He is as accomplished as they come as an academic, professor at Georgetown, formerly professor at North Carolina, well-renowned best-selling author, the one and only Dr. Michael Eric Dyson is on the line with yours truly right now. My brother, what's going on, man? How are you?
My friend, it's always great to be in contact with you, and to be on the air with you is a special delight.
Tears We Cannot Stop, a sermon to white America. What is this book about? Why did you decide to write it?
Well, the book is about how I'm inviting white brothers and sisters to think about the issues of race in a more strategic fashion, a more conscious fashion, to interrogate some of the stuff that's going on with black people and brown people in America, the deaths of unarmed black citizens at the hands of police, the way in which black kids are expelled earlier and brown kids are expelled earlier from school than others, and to think more seriously about what whiteness means and how it has been a force that has hindered and prevented progress in a serious fashion, not the least of which the latest example is the present occupant of the White House right now.
Well, explain that part. When you say not the least of which is the present occupant of the White House now, explain to my listeners, what do you mean by bringing him up?
Well, I bring him up only because, obviously, President Donald J. Trump is a significant figure, the most important and arguably the most powerful figure in the world today as a result of occupying that office. But several things have occurred under his presidency that have caused people quite a bit of concern, consternation, outrage. There have been protests and the like. And I'm saying part of what we have to understand about President Trump is the way in which a certain variety of whiteness operates when associated with him, a kind of innocence. What I mean by innocence is a refusal to be fully mature and to grapple with the complicated meanings of race in America, and the way in which that kind of white innocence, I think, has led to his appointment of people like Steve Bannon in the White House, who has more power or equal power as a general. When you think about Jeff Sessions as the Attorney General, some very problematic appointees because they said racially insensitive things in the past, and we have to ask what's going on. So that's why I bring President Trump up, only because he's been associated with this by the choices he's made for who will occupy his cabinet.
We're talking to Dr. Michael Eric Dyson, author of the new book, Tears We Cannot Stop, A Sermon to White America. He's right here with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio. My buddy, Joe Madison, who hosts his show on Urban View Channel, Sirius XM 126 every weekday morning from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m., morning drive. He always quotes Dr. Martin Luther King, since the most dangerous things in the world, sincere ignorance or conscientious stupidity. When you think about our president, some people label one or the other or both, and they're derogatory towards him or what have you. But when you look at what's transpiring on a day like today, I didn't know that I would have you on to talk about this, because I didn't know that this had happened prior to agreeing to bring you on the show, Dr. Michael Eric Dyson. But I'm so happy that you're here, because I'd like to know your reaction to the Trump travel ban that's obviously been circulating throughout the news, throughout the news waves over this past weekend. Your thoughts on that?
It's an astonishing repudiation of everything this country should stand for. It's a rejection of democracy at its best when you're singling out countries that are Muslim and you're singling out countries that are people of color. It's a double whammy. These are not even the people that led to 9/11. These are not the folk in Saudi Arabia and other places where they were trained who came to America to undermine our democracy. So what it looks like is an arbitrary selection of countries that happen to be Muslim, and it is a religiously defiant act on the part of an American society that says no one's religion should dictate or determine how they are treated. And for Donald Trump to impose this ban, already challenged in court and part of it rejected and repudiated legally, the reality is we are seeing again the fostering of an environment that is derogatory towards certain people, that is specifically aimed at and geared toward Muslim brothers and sisters. And we saw yesterday, Stephen A., what happened in Quebec with the terrorist act against Muslim brothers and sisters at a temple and mosque. This is why temperature and tone matter. This is why the signification and symbolism of antipathy toward or intolerance of other people and their religion can result in some destructive things. I am wholly upset by this, concerned to the point of action in the streets. We must resist this, and we must say to President Trump, this is not the right thing to do. This is not who we are best as a nation.
But there are people, Dr. Michael Eric Dyson, who would ask the question that President Obama, former president now, Barack Obama, instituted his own ban to some degree, where you're talking about 38 countries who were no longer allowed to come in here without visas, and ultimately that list was highlighted where it directed itself towards the very 7 countries that President Donald Trump targeted, where they'd have to come in, and they'd have to have visas, as opposed to getting a pass on that particular issue. So essentially what they're saying is Donald Trump got this to some degree from President Obama. He's just implementing it in a more emphatic fashion. What does somebody like Dr. Michael Eric Dyson say to that?
Well, I would say this then. If that were the case, why are you doing it again? Why are you redoubling the efforts if it's already done? If it's already done, if it's already been put in place, and there's nothing more you can do by an executive order except cause tremendous hostility, tremendous anxiety, and tremendous consternation, then what you've done is a symbolic gesture to isolate these people even further. One could argue, if it were the case that Obama had indeed done that with a broader scope, what he was trying to do was to encompass a wide range of peoples who could potentially undermine the virtue and the stability of our democracy without unnecessarily and unduly pointing a harsh, if you will, focus and light on the very people who are now outraged. So at the very least, the stylistic approach of Donald Trump is problematic, but I think it's more than that. It's the substantive assault upon Muslim brothers and sisters, and targeting them with this kind of ban does nothing to relieve the actual possibility of terror, because nobody has ever been stopped from committing an act of terror by this kind of method, because nobody who has come from the countries that he has targeted have ever committed terror on this land. So the reality is, not only is it feckless and spineless, it is ineffectual at the same time.
So for clarification purposes, despite the fact that these are 7 Muslim countries, but it hasn't been exacted and exercised against all Muslim countries, you still consider this unquestionably a ban against Muslims, a Muslim ban. Is that correct?
Of course, you don't have to ban all Muslims to say that all the people you have banned are Muslim. You don't have to ban all black people to say that all the ones that you banned happen to be black. So, yeah, it's definitely a Muslim ban. It points to a particular group of people. It further stigmatizes them. It creates a stereotype, and it undermines their stability. And the reality is, many of the people who have been victims of terror by Muslim brothers and sisters, those who claim to practice that, have been other Muslims. So the reality is, this does nothing to relieve the aggravated assault, so to speak, upon the image and the reputation of brothers and sisters who are our brothers and sisters throughout the world, and many of the people, Stephen A., who seek to come to this country who are fleeing oppression. And what Donald Trump has done is created the very thing he seeks to avoid. By waking a sleeping giant, so to speak, he now gives added fuel to those who would claim to stand against American soil. That's why in my book, Tears We Cannot Stop, A Sermon to White America, I talk about the backdrop, the ideological, the political, and the social backdrop to a certain species of whiteness. And I have an entire chapter on Donald Trump, and I speak about this in very serious fashion.
We're talking to Dr. Michael Eric Dyson. You heard him bring up the title, Tears We Cannot Stop, A Sermon to White America. New author, a best-selling author, New York Times best-selling book, Tears We Cannot Stop. He's right here, Dr. Michael Eric Dyson with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio. Before I let you get on out of here, you talk about a sermon to white America. Let's bring up the Trump incident in this regard, or the Trump situation with the travel ban in this regard. There are millions upon millions of white Americans who are against his actions. So when we hear the title, Tears We Cannot Stop, A Sermon to White America, do you concern yourself at all that white America will think you're talking about all instead of the few or some who, may mirror his thinking, his actions, et cetera, on this particular matter? Something like that along those lines. Do you concern yourself with it, considering the title of this book?
Of course, Stephen A., but I mean, the reality is, when you talk about the Cleveland Cavaliers, we talk about LeBron James is on that team, and so is J.R. Smith. You can talk about them as a team and what they represent, but each individual has a different outlook, perspective, but they are viewed as a team, and what one does, they all end up doing, and they're held accountable for. Welcome to the world of African-American people who are barely and rarely judged as individuals, but rather as a group. I would not replicate such spurious assault upon anybody. It's a trope. It's a convenient hand, if you will, a convenient nutshell for me to be able to say I'm talking to my white brothers and sisters. Most white brothers and sisters who have read my big book understand that. They understand that I'm reaching out in love as a Baptist preacher to say, white America, you, whether or not you consent to what is going on in your name, you are culpable and responsible as a white American to speak up and say, I am not part of that. I am not part of the white supremacist society that is benefited, by the way, even liberal white brothers and sisters who don't subscribe to white racist supremacist thinking. So the reality is all of us are implicated in that, and I'm reaching out across the border of race to say I love my white brothers and sisters. I want them to think about how whiteness has not only punished black and brown and red and yellow people, it's punished white people as well. Poor white people who are sold a bill of goods, right? This past election was said to be a referendum on working class white people. Well, here's the interesting thing. W.E.B. Du Bois, the great philosopher and thinker, said that many white people are sold a bill of goods called the psychic wages of whiteness. The richer white people, the wealthier white people, the more powerful white people will say to you, at least you're not a Negro. At least you're not them. Now we will continue to screw you, deprive you of resources, but at least you have the advantage of feeling superior. And I'm saying to you, Donald Trump can no more help the average working class white person than the man on the moon. And no policy is put forth yet will support them. Poor people and working class people who are white have more in common with people of color across the board than they do with the very few rich people who dominate us all. That's what I'm saying, and that's the love I show.
Before I let you go, real quick, how old are you?
I'm 58 years old, sir.
You're 58 years old.
Yes.
Last question to you. Dr. Michael Eric Dyson.
Right.
Author of the book, Tears We Cannot Stop, A Sermon to White America. Right now, at this point in time, have you ever been more fearful for the state of this country as you are right now?
No, sir. Not in terms of who it represents us, in terms of that Oval Office. But what I also know is that I come from a people whose backs have been against the wall through slavery, Jim Crow, racial terror. And if we've defeated that, we can defeat this. And I want to offer to my white brothers and sisters a reminder. The great preacher Howard Thurman said, never reduce your life to the event that you confront right now. Always have a vision and an imagination beyond where you are. This is the gift I offer to my white brothers and sisters and others beyond the faith to remember. As bad as it is now, it has been worse in the past, and together, across race, class, gender, culture, and sexual orientation, we can forge a nation that will be better than we are now.
Dr. Michael Eric Dyson, always appreciate you, my brother. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you, sir.
All right. The one and only Dr. Michael Eric Dyson, author of the new book, Tears We Cannot Stop, A Sermon to White America, on the New York Times best-selling list already. Appreciate Dr. Michael Eric Dyson for coming on the show. Back with your phone calls and more in a minute. You're listening to the Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio.
Not available in all states. Have you been denied?
Hey, how you doing, Stephen A. Smith? First-time caller, long-time listener. Love your show, man. Keep it up.
Thank you.
I'm originally from Iraq. Came in here in 2000. Right before the war in Iraq, I started working as a translator with the U.S. military, and I have lost a lot of friends that were in Iraq as translators as well. So it's our part and our duty to be alongside with our men and women, because this country gave us what our own countries never ever gave us. And so I can contribute to the subject that the Muslim ban with Donald Trump. Let me tell you, Stephen A.
Go ahead. I just need you to hurry up, but go ahead.
Yes. Yeah. The problem is that Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates and Egypt, those countries are the cause of 9/11, along with Pakistan with the San Bernardino attack.
Yes.
And so Iraqis are actually fighting ISIS as we speak, alongside with the U.S. military right now in Mosul.
Okay.
And we almost defeated that virus that is existed, in the Islam world right now.
I got it.
And so what I can tell you is, when you ban people that are helping you to begin with, it really creates hate. It really backtracks on you. We have 7,000 men and women alongside with the U.S. With the Iraqi military. They're in the deep threat right now with this ban.
I got you.
I mean, this guy is not thinking long picture.
Let me address that. I appreciate your comments, Basim. Thank you so much. You were born in Iraq. You know what's going on. You know that they're assisting in fighting ISIS, et cetera, et cetera. Here's my thing. So many of us lack knowledge about this particular subject. And I appreciate the call, Basim. Thank you so much. So many of us lack knowledge when it comes to the nuances and the intricacies of what goes on, whether it was for former President Barack Obama's decision, whether it's with President Donald Trump's position. Here's my position, and I echoed this on First Take this morning. 62.9 million people voted for this man. You can say what you want, but Donald Trump ain't doing anything that he didn't tell you he was not going to do. You voted for him anyway. Not only are those there are those who voted for him, and all of them, it wasn't because of that. A lot of it was because of the economy and things of that nature. But there were 2 million black folks who decided to show up to the polls and vote for President Obama, but didn't show up to vote for Hillary Rodham Clinton. Despite Trump swearing he's going to build a wall, a great big beautiful wall, and the Mexicans are going to pay for it. The Latinos went out at a 29% rate and voted for this man. Bottom line is clear. You have certain folks in this country who don't have a damn problem with what Donald Trump's doing. That's what we need to think about. Hour number 2 up next.
Message and data rates may apply.
Coming at you right here on ESPN Radio, as I love to do every weekday afternoon on 98.7 FM, 710 ESPN LA, and of course, Sirius XM, ESPN Radio, Channel 80, 866-729 ESPN is always the number to call up. It's 866-729-3776. Any moment now, we'll have our resident NFL analyst extraordinaire for ESPN. The one and only Ryan Clark. He's on the air with us right now, actually. Ryan Clark is on with yours truly right here on the Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio. What's up, big boy? How you doing?
Hey, man, I'm just down here in H-Town waiting for you to arrive,
well,
man.
Listen, man, I gotta hope I make it there. You might have to hold it down on First Take and radio without me. I'm not sure I'm gonna be able to make it, Ryan. I'm not sure I'm gonna be able to make it. Listen, let's get right into this Super Bowl because that's something we haven't talked enough about. You've had a week to dissect and contemplate this matchup that's scheduled to take place in Super Bowl 51 in Houston this coming Sunday night between the New England Patriots and Atlanta Falcons. If I asked you which team should be feared the most, who would it be?
It's the New England Patriots. And, I've been going back and forth with this because this is my first time talking this week, and I've been trying to make a decision. And you look at the Falcons and what they can do and the personnel they have. But when you're the New England Patriots and you have Bill Belichick and you have Tom Brady, you have 2 weeks to prepare for a game. I keep thinking about the greatest show on turf and what that defense was able to do against that team and the way that these two historically great, respectively, coach and player have played in this big game and coached in this big game. For me, it's what the New England Patriots can come with game plan-wise and preparation-wise and actually execute under the big lights and the bright lights of the Super Bowl. I think they're the team that has to be feared the most. When you look at the New England Patriots, though, I mean, their defense, obviously, they've been strong against the run this year, not as strong against the pass. They've got, the number 1 ranked defense in terms of points allowed, but 8th in yardage allowed, 12th against the pass. And you look at them, they just give you the impression that they don't break, but they bend an awful lot. And I look at them and I say to myself, damn, Atlanta's got an awful lot of weapons. You're New England, particularly defending the backfield of Devontae Freeman and Tevin Coleman. How you going to deal with that? Yeah, I mean, it's tough. You look at what Kyle Shanahan has been able to do in these last 2 playoff games, the different matchups he's been able to create by alignment and by assignment. And what I mean by that is when he puts Julio Jones in motion and has him as the back stat guy and not the guy that releases upfield deep, able to option off of the cornerback who's guarding him. When he puts a Devontae Freeman matched up on a Cliff Averill because he knows he has a fire zone coming, and now that guy has to stop Devontae Freeman. He's done an amazing job of getting people in matchups they can win. And that's the scary part because he has so many pieces, so many people to play with and move around on his chessboard that is very difficult to stop everything. But when you look at the New England Patriots, they take away what you do best. And when you think about the Atlanta Falcons, it's the timing routes. It's getting the ball out of Matt Ryan's hands. And I think Bill Belichick, Matt Patricia, and that defense will come in with the plan to stop Julio Jones, just as they did with Antonio Brown, stop the run game, as you saw them do by holding their gaps against Le'Veon Bell and D'Angelo Williams, and make Matt Ryan flinch, make Matt Ryan pump the ball in the pocket and have to go to his second and third reads, hoping they can win there.
But I guess what I'm asking Ryan Clark is this. Isn't that relatively easy for Matt Ryan to do compared to most quarterbacks in the NFL because of not one but two running backs who can catch passes out of the backfield of Devontae Freeman and Tevin Coleman?
No doubt. I mean, I think we saw this on display for the first time against Denver in Denver, when we saw Tevin Coleman and Devontae Freeman really exploit them in the pass game. And since then, that's been a huge part of this Atlanta offense, this Matt Ryan-led offense. But we've also seen Bill Belichick on many occasions make the thing you do best the hardest thing for you to accomplish game day, the hardest thing for you to do during the game time. And so I'm expecting them to have a plan for that. Now, every now and then, guys are just going to have to win. Van Noy, Hightower, Ninkovich, they're going to have to find a way to stop these running backs out of the backfield and cover them. And if you're asking me talent for talent, physical gift for physical gift, they can't do it.
Are you
that's why it's about scheme. That's why it's about execution.
Ryan Clark right here with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio. Are you aware of the fact of that Julio Jones was targeted 129 times? Second on the team was Mohamed Sanu with 81. Do you know who the third targeted receiver was for the Atlanta Falcons?
That had to be one of the backs.
That would happen to be Devontae Freeman with 65. Yeah. 65. So I guess what I'm thinking is Julio Jones at 6'4", 220, 225. He's going to automatically require double coverage. I don't think you're going to have to I don't think you're going to be able to single cover him. You might put Malcolm Butler or somebody else on him. But if you have Mohamed Sanu and Taylor Gabriel running routes other than 10 or 12 yards deep, if they're willing to go deeper, then that prevents defensemen from coming up and cheating near the line of scrimmage to sort of neutralize those running backs. Doesn't that make life considerably harder for the New England Patriots defense?
Well, listen, life is hard when you play Atlanta, period. Not just because they've been good, because of the people that they have. That is why Matt Ryan is presumably going to be the MVP, because he's been able to spread the ball around because he has talented people to get the ball to. And so, yes, they can go down the field. But if you've watched Atlanta throughout this season, the guy they go deep to is Julio Jones. Taylor Gabriel, he can run. He can get down the field, but he's mostly yards after the catch. Mohamed Sanu is the guy they use to make the combat catches. Many of the big plays have come from the two backs in the backfield and Julio Jones. If you're the New England Patriots, you find a way to make Sanu, to make Gabriel, to make Robinson beat you after the catch. You don't let the backs out of the backfield beat you. You don't let Julio Jones beat you. You tell whether it's Logan Ryan or whether it's Rowe that you have to go out and stop some of these second and third wide receivers by yourself, because schematically we're going to take Julio Jones and these running backs out of the passing game.
How close are you to making a prediction on this game?
I'm going to make a prediction probably Sunday at about 3:30.
Okay, about 3 hours before game time. Let me go to a couple of other subjects right here with Ryan Clark on the Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio. I had a big-time problem with John Lynch getting the GM job with the 49ers. I like I said on First Take, I want to reiterate, nothing at all against him personally. Right. I hope his family, friends, everybody's watching. Absolutely, positively nothing against him. But despite the fact that he was a player in this league, phenomenal. Despite the fact that he's obviously athletically gifted, based on his years at Stanford and then his showcasing his talent in the NFL. Despite the fact that he's a great analyst, and he has been for Fox, a 6-year deal, Ryan Clark, for a guy that's never been in a front office on any level, I have a problem with that, because I don't think that's something that would happen for most of us. What's your response to that?
No, I agree with that. I don't necessarily have a problem with it, but I do see it as something that doesn't happen for whether it's most former players, most people straight out of the booth with no experience, whether it be in scouting, whether it be in personnel, or just running a team in general, even running a branch of a team's organization in general. And so, yeah, I don't necessarily think it's a great hire. I don't have a problem with it other than I think there were more qualified people for the position. As far as John Lynch, I echo the things you say. I respect him. I respect who he was as a player. I respect him as a color guy throughout the games that I've watched this year. But I don't necessarily think he's the best person for this position. I believe they interviewed people who were more qualified. But I think this goes along with kind of the dysfunction that has been the San Francisco 49ers hiring process the last 3 years. When you go from Tom Sula to Chip Kelly, and now you move on from both GM and head coach to now get you're going to offer Kyle Shanahan a 6-year deal, and you've given John Lynch a 6-year deal. I think Kyle Shanahan had a large part to do with this. They said he would have, if he was going to decide to be the coach, he would have a say in who the GM was. So to me, that model is backwards.
Yeah, but it's one thing to have a say. It's another thing for a dude to get a 6-year deal. First of all, Kyle Shanahan is qualified and he's worked through the terrain in order to get his first head coaching opportunity. How the hell he get a 6-year deal? That's what I'm trying to figure out. What has he done to get a 6-year deal, let alone John Lynch?
Stephen, you know what happens is you make mistake after mistake after mistake, and so now you try to overcorrect it. Right? So now they're saying we've gone from coach to coach to coach. We've gone from GM to GM, and people see us moving on fast. So now this job is hard to give away. So in order to show people that we're about stability, in order to show people that we're about continuity, we have to go give these guys these 6-year deals. Now, that just means that you're willing to pay it out if it doesn't work out, but it makes those guys feel comfortable, and it allows them to get somebody and tell the fan base, we are now committed to sticking this thing through. And I think it's just an overcorrection on past mistakes.
Ryan Clark, always appreciate you, buddy. I see you down in Houston, my man. You take it easy.
Hey, man, get here, man. Be safe.
I hope so. I hope so. Take it easy, my man. Ryan Clark, NFL analyst extraordinaire for ESPN, former Super Bowl champion with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Inexplicably, I don't know what the hell he went to the Washington Redskins for. That's a subject for another day. 866-729-ESPN is the number to call up. That's 866-729-3776. That isn't the only hire I took issue with, albeit for an entirely different reason. Chris Ballard, new general manager for the Indianapolis Colts. I've got something to say about that. Plus, I'll get back to all of this talk about Trump's banishment of 7 countries, Muslim-dominated countries. We'll continue to talk about that and more up next with Stephen A. on ESPN. Things that I'll bring up before I go back to the phones is Chris Ballard being hired as general manager for the Indianapolis Colts. My issue with Lynch is very, very clear. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm all about fairness. The same people that sit up there and say, oh, Stephen A, I mean, can you calm down? You always bring up race. Are the same people that are nowhere to be found when I call for Marvin Lewis to be fired, when I said Lovie Smith's time in Chicago should have been up. They never bring that stuff up. When I questioned whether or not Jim Caldwell was going to survive or should survive, never bring that up. When I get on one athlete after another for acting like they don't have any damn sense, especially those who can't stay off the weed, nowhere to be found. The second I bring up something that criticizes somebody, why? Oh, here he goes again. I'm going to do it again anyway. John Lynch being hired by the 49ers. I have a problem with it because, ladies and gentlemen, there is no African American, there is no Hispanic on record that got a general manager's position with a National Football League team that has absolutely positively zero experience in the front office. Hasn't happened. Not for one of them. I find that to be a tad bit odd. John Lynch is a good man, I'm sure. Excellent analyst, excellent athlete, great reputation. But he picked up the phone and called his friend Kyle Shanahan because he used to play for Kyle's father, Mike Shanahan. And that ultimately facilitated a process that ended up with him getting this job. I'm just saying. 866-729-ESPN. It's 866-729-3776. That wasn't the case with Ballard for Indianapolis. He's qualified, deserves the job, deserves the opportunity. Here's the problem with that hire, though. He doesn't want Pagano. And was told by Ursa he has to take Pagano because he's going to at least give Pagano a chance this year. The problem with that is you've already put Andrew Luck behind the 8 ball. This is his 5th year. He was sacked 41 times in year 1. He's been sacked 41 times in year 5. This dude might as well be on suicide watch the way they protected him. He's your franchise. And you go out and you hire somebody that already don't want your coach there. That's just stupid. I'm not saying Ballard shouldn't be there. I'm saying that Ballard's going to get the job, give him the authority to get rid of Pagano. The right thing to do. Bash in New Jersey. You're live with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio. Talk to me.
I'm a first-time caller and long-time listener. I just want to say that I'm a pro-American, America only. So I'm with my president and behind my president, whoever that might be, Democrat, Republican, or even a private party. I'm an immigrant from Jordan. I am now an American citizen. I'm a former Muslim, now agnostic. Technically, I should not be alive for living Islam. But people are good and bad, and to make a good person do bad things, I think that only takes to bring them up on hate and violence toward others. I'm with the ban, but why are we after governments and after people, a.k.a. the Muslims, and not after the ideologies that are actually more deadly than cancer to humans? Like, honestly, like I said, I was raised up in Jordan as a Muslim. I was taught to hate America. I was taught to hate Israel. I was taught to hate Christians and Jews in school. It's the ideology that calls for hate and segregation between people and violence towards those people who are just not against you, just different beliefs than you are. Why do we run away from the main problems and turn our heads to it?
Because that's all. No, you're just talking. I understand where you're coming from, and I appreciate your sentiments. Thank you for the call, but you're just talking because you can't legislate what's in people's heart. You can legislate their actions. You can make sure that there are ramifications and punishments for their actions. But what you can't do is sit up there and say, I'm going to do this, that, or the other to you because your belief system is different from my own. Your belief system is harmful and malicious and detrimental. You can get them off the airwaves, but just walk in the street. If you're a painter, a construction worker, an accountant, or whatever the case may be, and you go about the business of doing your job, and you're a law-abiding citizen that doesn't harm anybody, but at the same time, you have an ideology or a belief system that a lot of people wouldn't disagree with. That's what makes America America. The fact that people are allowed to believe and feel what they want to believe and feel so long as they don't exercise harm against anybody else. That's America. It's what America is supposed to be. Ronald in Long Island. You're live with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio. What's up, Ronald?
Hey, what's going on, my brother?
I'm good, man. Go ahead.
All right. First of all, I want to thank you, man. Excellent interview with Michael Eric Dyson. And for my white brothers and sisters out there who may not be familiar with him, please do not be intimidated by his pride. Okay, by his aggressiveness. Be enthralled by his intellect, his knowledge, and his inclusiveness. Excellent interview. And let me tell you something. America is going to be okay. Based on what I saw this weekend, based on what I see when I look at these NBA rosters and I see all nationalities playing together, living together, loving together, we're going to be fine. We're going to be absolutely fine. We, again, have sat back and wanted to be in support of our president, okay, waited since the end result of the elections on up to inauguration, and there's a reason why many of us have gotten so tired of hearing, you need to give him a chance. Wait. Again, if there's no God in the spirit of what we see in this man and in his tone, it is what it is. Maya Angelou told us all. Once a person shows you who they are, believe them.
Yeah, that's true. That's true, Ronald. But remember, at the same time, you don't get to ignore him because he is the president. And with the president comes massive, massive responsibilities when you're the leader of the free world. My belief is, my philosophy is this. He's our president. 62.9 million people voted for him. He got 360 electoral college votes. In the end, the system mandates he's our president. He won a fair and square election. With that being said, we have to adapt and adjust accordingly because, again, there's plenty of times where people have been elected to the presidency and there's been tens of millions of people who didn't agree with that decision. They had to live with it. So do the rest of us.
I want to say this. The one thing that I've been taught is that our president and our legislators in Congress and in the Senate, they work for the people. They're there to work for the people. And again, if you're not doing by right of the people, what we saw in this nation this weekend is that the people have the right to keep the pressure on, to make it, to do the right thing.
Ronald, I got to run. I appreciate the call. Thank you so much. You're absolutely right. The American people have a right to keep the pressure on, to protest, to make sure their voices are heard. No question about it. But at the same time, he was elected to the presidency. And as long as he's following the laws of our Constitution, and there are checks and balances, we've got a judicial branch. You know, we've got Congress. How about the two houses of Congress, the Senate and congressmen, men and women. I mean, let's look at it for what it is. This is not a dictatorship. At the end of the day, there's but so much he's going to be able to do if the people speak and our elected officials follow suit. And if the folks don't speak and our elected officials don't follow suit, then we deserve what we get, whatever that may be. 866-729-ESPN. That's 866-729-3776. We'll continue talking about Trump's travel ban. What Steve Kerr had to say. I'll replay for you what Steve Kerr, head coach for the Golden State Warriors, had to say. Plus, we were talking about the hiring of John Lynch, Chris Ballard for the Indianapolis Colts as well. And I'll get into that annihilation that the Warriors handed to the Los Angeles Clippers over the weekend, a 46-point loss. Maybe Doc Rivers should make a deal after all. Quit fasting in a hurry for Carmelo Anthony. What about you? What do you think? This is Stephen A. Smith Show. That atrocity that took place Saturday night. I mean, I do know that the Los Angeles Clippers are not the same team without Chris Paul. I get that. But Lord have mercy. I could not believe how bad they looked. What an annihilation. Steph Curry was on fire, 43 points, put on an absolute show. Austin Rivers, Raymond Felton, talk about hurting your NBA stock. Talk about that. I mean, it's something special. So you got that going on. There's two things that emanates from that game to me. Number one is just unfair. Kevin Durant, second best player on the planet, being a part of the Golden State Warriors. I mean, he only had 23 points, but he's hit 9 of 11 shots. He can just do what he wants, when he wants, how he wants. He's just that lethal of a marksman as an offensive player. And then to have the Splash Brothers as teammates, it's just not fair. I mean, I'm really, really worried about there being legitimate competition. I believe in my heart of hearts that it's not fair. It's just not fair. I don't know anybody can beat Golden State. On the place of the Clippers, I got to tell you, Blake Griffin just doesn't make that much of a difference anymore. He's a jump shooter. Yeah, he can dunk in traffic. You know, he dunk on a fast break or whatever, but he's just not that much of a factor anymore. He just isn't. Might want to move on. You just might want to move on. Should you go and get Melo? I think so. I think Cleveland should go and grab Melo because Kevin Love, like I told y'all, back spasms. Couldn't play yesterday against Oklahoma City. See what I'm saying? Not like Kevin Love. A lot. I think he was far too villainized last year, but it's just not a good situation right now. Melo looks better than both Kevin Love and Blake Griffin in Cleveland and L.A., respectively. Just needed to say that. Phil in St. Louis, you're live with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio. What's up, Phil?
Hello, Stephen. I'm St. Louis, white conservative. We spoke in the past and had very good back and forth. What I'd like to comment on is that it's not my fault what's going on in Chicago with the black-on-black crime and the drugs and the lack of education and the kids not graduating and the schools being in the toilet and the family crumbling and black men not doing or being responsible.
Stop right there, Phil. Phil, you and I have tussled in the past. I got a surprise for you, Phil. Are you listening?
What? Yes, sir.
I respect you. I respect your position. And you have a right to feel the way that you feel. I have never, however, challenged you in terms of saying that you were not right to point to black culpability when it comes to black on black crime. I brought that up. You're absolutely right. When we see what's transpiring in the streets of Chicago, it's a travesty. and something needs to be done. And while I might not totally agree with President Trump when he talked about bringing in the feds if that stuff doesn't get cleaned up, I appreciated him making that threat so we could all stand up and pay attention to what's happening in our communities without question. But what I've said to you in the past, which you've agreed with me, Phil, when we tussled about this, is that let's not completely exonerate those who are not members of the African American communities in terms of what systemically has plagued communities. Ultimately, the responsibility falls on the folks who are actually being affected. Absolutely correct. I'm good with that, so long as you don't completely try to absolve contributing factors. You feel me?
But I don't think the doctor just, for lack of a better word, blaming Whitey gets us anywhere.
I don't think so either. I agree with you. I agree with you. But listen, you and I agree with that. You're totally right about that. That doesn't get us anywhere. What I'm saying to you is that you didn't call up and say, okay, all of us are culpable to some degree, but damn it, this complaining doesn't get us anywhere. How do we move forward? Instead, what you said was, we're not to blame for this, and that, as if to absolve folks from things. And I'm saying that's what you can't do, Phil, because inevitably you're inviting folks to continuously point a finger when we're not willing to accept culpability. If your kid came home and he was complaining about his professor, right? As wrong as you knew the professor or teacher was, you'd send your child right back there. You know why? Because the real world doesn't allow allowances for you to make those excuses as a reason for keeping you down. You got to go right back there and handle your business. But privately, you would pay attention to what your kid is saying about that teacher, and you'd keep an eye on it, wouldn't you?
Yes, but the problem, the doctor just upset me with, seemed like the same old line from the left, the blaming Whitey, and it just gets us absolutely nowhere.
But Phil, you and I both know that folks on the left, particularly African Americans, are going to do that, whereas folks on the right, whether they're white African American or what have you, are going to have a different philosophy and ideology. Again, there's a little bit of truth in both. But what you don't do is absolve anybody from it. Once we all accept the culpability, then we're all able to come together and grow.
But we can't. That's the problem. I mean, me and you come from different points of view. Me and you sat in a room and discussed, I don't care what it is, whatever the subject is. I think we can walk out of the room and you'd give a little, I'd give a little,
sure,
and it'd be solved. But what's going on now is insanity.
Well,
I mean, when Obama got elected, I didn't act like this. I mean, I had a lot of angst, and I was upset. But I didn't act like they're acting now.
Phil. But you did have white folks literally on airwaves, like the Sean Hannity show and others, crying because they were scared that Obama was indoctrinating elementary school children because he was reading a book to them. So, yeah, you didn't do that. But there were others who did. So there's always extremes in America. There's always people who take it to another level. There's always people who don't appear to be as fair and balanced as you and I appear to be having this conversation. We understand that. That doesn't mean that we absolve one side or the other. That's all I'm saying.
So we're on the same page, but
yeah.
I just, I fear for what's going on now as far as the angst and the hatred.
So do I, Phil.
It gets us absolutely nowhere, and I think reasonable people can come up with reasonable solutions.
Phil, but I'm with you. I fear exactly what you fear, and I appreciate your call. Call back anytime, buddy. 866-729-ESPN. That's 866-729-3776. Phil and I feel a little bit differently, but I understand exactly where he's coming from. And he makes very, very valid points. And guys like him are always welcome to call this show. Your phone calls to close out the show. In L.A. from SiriusXM, Channel 80, ESPN Radio. Back to the phones we go before we get on out of here. Let's go to CB in Los Angeles. You're live with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio. CB, talk to me.
Hey, there go there, Stephen A. You killing it out here. You are doing something that's real special. This is what I have. Let me just sit on this down here with Stephen A. When Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Eli Manning, Russell Wilson, Matty Ice from Atlanta, and Des Crockett from Dallas go on the field, there's only one thing. that is the protective shield. They try to fit the ball in like a wrench in a socket. They step to the left. They step to the right. But there appears to be no open receiver in sight. The pocket is collapsing. But this is not happening. Lo and behold, a receiver comes free. They bring it back
CB.
and hurl a fly ball to these.
I got you, CB. I appreciate the call. Thank you so much. I'm not going to let y'all be on the show trying to be a rap artist. I appreciate it. The effort was nice, but you can't do that. Stevie Ray in Houston. The one and only Stevie Ray, former WWE champion. What's up, big boy? How you doing?
Brother, what's going on with you, man?
It's good to hear from you, man. What's going on with you? Talk to me real quick.
Hey, man, you're going to be in my city in a couple of days,
You know what? I'm on the way. You know that. I'm about to do that. What's going on?
Hey, brother, this will be real quick. I missed the Eric Dyson thing, but I'll look it up later.
Yes.
But what I need from you is this. Now, I haven't been able to call you in about a week and a half because the Steelers lost, brother, and they ate me alive, brother. I was sick.
Yep.
And I know you were too. But can you please repeat what you said about Jay Cutler the other day? Because, brother, it had me rolling.
Well, first
Can
of
you
all,
please repeat that?
He looks like Jabba the Hutt, this fat and slovenly and out of shape. And this guy's supposed to be a quarterback for the Chicago Bears, just stealing money with his trifling self. I mean, they're just so satisfied. I mean, he is just so happy the season's over because he's on vacation. That's what I said about Jay Cutler, who I consider to be the worst quarterback in history. All right, that's what I did. It's fat, slovenly, out of shape self, just chilling hard. I mean, I thought I had a belly back at least a few months ago because I lost pounds. I'm looking a little better now. But this dude is just stealing money. He just gets on my nerves. But Stevie Ray, man, I got to get ready to run. But I appreciate you calling, and I'll reach out to you when I get out to Houston, my man.
Will do, brother. You have a good one.
You take it easy. Yeah, this fat, slovenly self. I mean, Jay Cutler's just the worst. What a joke. What an absolute joke. Tatiana in New York. You're live at Stephen A. on ESPN Radio. Tatiana, how are you?
I'm awesome, and I hope you're awesome too, because I think you are.
I appreciate that very much. As I feel, I feel especially awesome since you told me so. Since you told me I am, so thank you very much. But go ahead.
So two things. First of all, everything you say, I'm like 1,000% with you. Okay, totally. I'm a New Yorker, so what we're going through, why are we all shocked? 77 years of Jim Crow, and we can't handle 4 years of this? But you put him in there. So why are we, yeah, I'm good. No, I got you. I'm laughing, actually.
Well, I wouldn't laugh, but I would tell you that, again, we've dealt with a lot throughout history, and it ain't just black folks, it's minorities of all likes, and not to mention the fact that, listen, everybody that voted for the man is not racist and all of that stuff. I think it's a very irresponsible thing to say. Some people just wanted a better economy, what they felt needed to be a better economy, whatever their interpretation of that is. Some people felt like we were a bit too PC, and some people felt like so many different folks were taking over, and they felt like this country, they were losing it.
So you're going to put this in place? Okay.
Well, unfortunately, it wasn't Kasich. If it was me, I liked Kasich. I really, really did. I liked Marco Rubio. I really did. I liked Jeb Bush. I ain't gonna lie to you. I liked him. I really did. But this is what we have, and that is that.
You need to run, and I think you get.
Excuse me?
Voted in. You need to run.
Oh, no.
You got to follow it. Stop being denied.
I cannot run for office because from a legal perspective, let's just say I have too much of a Clinton-esque past. I need to refrain.
So you need to come to, real quick, you need to come to my event February 8th at the Museum of Sex. You're invited.
Oh, my Lord. The Museum of Sex. I appreciate the offer, Tatiana. Thank you so much. I gotta go. Let me go. What did he say? Oh, my Lord. Let me move on. Rudy in Phoenix. You're live with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio. What's up, Rudy?
Hey, what's going on? I just want to go ahead and say, I'm going to lay it out straight out there that I'm a conservative, and I just want to say I'm getting tired of being labeled all this stuff because I support this temporary ban. The reason why we support this ban is not because of their religion. We didn't say we support this ban because of religion. We support this ban because we want to have a more safer country. We don't lock our doors at night because we hate the people outside. We lock our doors at night because we love the people inside, and it's just temporary.
I'm not going to let you continue with that. I appreciate the call. Thank you so much. I can understand you saying fearing things from, a foreign relations perspective, travel, or things of that nature. But by and large, crime committed by Americans. If you got to lock your doors at night and you're scared to death, don't tell me it's because of folks from different countries. No, it's because of folks right here who are committing crimes against our own citizens. Let's be fair. Let's be fair. Shane in Florida, you're live with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio. Real quick, Shane, go ahead.
How's it going, man? I want to talk about that gentleman who called in the other day saying it's not our problem to fix Chicago.
Okay.
He does know that I don't want to say whitey, but a generation ago, we're the reason why we got rid of the jobs. There's a reason why there's a drug war going on. Young black men are getting targeted and get arrested, put in prison because of that. We put that in place, and that does need to be fixed. That's what we see.
Well, there's a plethora of things. There's a plethora of things that need to be fixed, but the fact of the matter is that most folks are not educated to the nuances of what's transpiring in our nation. They see what's going on, but are very unfamiliar with the historical aspects as to what provoked and spark those things. You have to take those things into consideration as well. And by and large, the average voter is ignorant to the plethora of issues that permeate our society. They're only concerned about what directly affects themselves and their own personal lives. Folks who go to the voting booth historically have shown they're concerned about what they want, not what was in the best interest of the country. You do know that.
Yes, sir, I do. I find it disgusting that people want to blame the people who are in poverty, people who have nothing, instead of the people who are in power.
Well, you don't blame them collectively, but individually, no. I'm not going to blame an impoverished community for the things that happen in impoverished communities. But there are bad apples everywhere. Rich, poor, wealthy, it doesn't matter. Middle class, it doesn't matter. There are bad apples everywhere. And those individuals who transgress and engage in insidious behavior that lends itself towards the detriment of our communities, they need to be held accountable for it and called to the carpet for it. Not communities per se. We don't want to generalize, but individualizing based on individuals' actions. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Got to get on out of here. We'll get into our Super Bowl talk tomorrow. I'll be with you live from Houston, site of Super Bowl 51. Until tomorrow, 22 hours from now. Peace and love, everybody.